God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us. He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Greetings. This is your brother Willie Muhammad with I Have a Testimony on National Network View. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has a consistent track record of being the champion of truth, but mainstream media strategically picks apart his words to mislead the masses. He is falsely portrayed as a hater by the forces and powers that be, who benefit from the ignorance of Black people and humanity in general for the purpose of keeping the masses ignorant.
But I'm going to tell you something. This is the reason, my dear sister, that they want a cloud put over me to veil me with hate and bigotry and anti-Semitism and homophobia and all these kinds of words, so that you won't listen and reason with the truth that's coming out of my mouth from God's man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that will free you.
These media platforms have been proven to publish fake news. They are known for hiding the truth and sensationalism. When it comes to their slander of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, please do not believe the hype. Now, modern technology, you can hear from him for yourself, unfiltered.
But I'm going to tell you something. The more they talk against me, find me on YouTube. Find the truth of the message that I'm giving to the entire world. Yes. And if you see that and hear that and believe that, you're already set free.
Today, we have the opportunity to hear the testimony of our brother Newman, who is a supporter and friend to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He's a producer of the Great Rock Newman Show, which is held on Howard University. He's an entrepreneur. He's a fighter in the battle to better the lives of our people. Thank you for coming on our show, Brother Rock. We really appreciate you accepting the invitation. I think you gotta, with the mute, is your mute up?
Let's see.
Got it.
We good?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'm saying it is an absolute honor for me to be here with you and your audience. I really have looked forward to today. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it, my brother. And we're going to get straight to it. In the article I read in preparation for this interview, I learned that you were raised in Brandywine, Maryland. And it says in a family that was in a modest rural homestead, as the article said, 5-room clapboard house with no indoor plumbing. So in the family of 8 boys and 2 girls, how did you go from that existence to being one of the biggest boxing promoters in the history of boxing?
Wow, that's a long story. I'll try to condense it. And let me apologize to your audience for, I'm in my home, but I'm wearing this mask. I actually chipped a tooth earlier, and I don't want to look like some Arkansas hillbilly. So I'm here with, this is vanity. This is in part vanity. You know, I have to say, Willie, and to your audience, that I was blessed in the sense that I was the last born. And by the time I was 5 years old, it was almost like I was an only child. My brothers and sisters were all many years older than me. So it was like I had the house to myself at that point. We were poor, but I certainly didn't know we were poor. And when I say I was blessed, there was a spirit that was infused in me. I remember when I was a child, when the Cowboys and Indians came on, I was always rooting for the Indians. You know, I went with the underdog. I had a sense of right and wrong and fairness, I think, at an early age. And according to my mom, my dad, all my brothers and sisters, I came out of the womb rebelling against, you know, sort of the status quo. By the time I got to be about 12 years old and started to read books like Man Child in the Promised Land and the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I read a book by Sammy Davis Jr. that was called Yes, I Can, and that was all about overcoming any obstacles that might be put before you. And then I discovered in about 1962, not when he won the Olympics, but in 1962, a couple of years later, I discovered Cassius Marcellus Clay and all the things that he was predicting and what his life was about at that time, and sort of the confidence that he had as a black man. And I was so ultimately drawn to that. I was a fanatical fan of his. On the night of February 25th, 1964, in Miami, I think I have my date my date right. When my mom and dad, the priest where I attended church, the principal where I attended school, all of my brothers, all of my sisters, all of my relatives, anyone in my sphere of influence, they laughed at me because I thought Cassius Clay could beat Sonny Liston. And that night, listening on a transistor radio through sketchy sound, when the announcer said that Sonny Liston was sitting on the bench and wasn't coming out for the 8th round, sitting on the stool and wasn't coming out for the 8th round, as my mother tells it, she thought I was going to lose my mind anyhow when he lost. But I ran around the house that you're talking about. It must have been about 16 degrees, snow on the ground, but I was so excited. I ran around the house barefooted. And that was a defining moment in my life, that when everyone else said that something couldn't happen, Cassius Clay at the time believed, and he made it happen. And at that moment, it was ingrained throughout my DNA that long before I ever heard Jesse Jackson say it, that if I believed it, I could achieve it. And that was a spirit that I had in all that I've done. I see the photo you have up there now. That's nice, man. It's Joe Frazier, Michael Spink, Sugar Ray Leonard, and of course you see me standing behind the greatest of all time, Muhammad Ali. So, the next thing that happened in my life that made such a difference was my matriculation to Howard University, what I still refer to as the greatest institution of higher learning in the history of the world. So many people I have heard say, oh, Howard, you're talking about the black Harvard. I'm like, no, let's flip that script. I'm talking about Howard University, that Harvard University wishes they could be as great as Howard University. So in going to Howard, it just gave me so much further identity and rooted me in the desire to make a difference and to know that I could be somebody special. And there's so many experiences there, there's too many to go through now. But having that experience, and as we are talking about the testimony and talking about the minister, I must share something with you, what was my first encounter with the minister. You know, there were brothers out in Brandywine, Maryland selling bean pies. But my first encounter, the minister came to Howard University to speak. I had heard, him before, and, as a fairly radical brother there on campus, I really, I had to go see him. Actually, I asked a couple of my friends to go with me, and they didn't want to. They were afraid. Like, man, I want to hear this brother. He's spitting fire. So I went and I had a very interesting experience. I think the NOI, the fruit at the time, you know, I wasn't a public figure. Nobody really knew who I was. I think they thought this young white dude then showed up. And brother, the pat down that they gave me, I remember very, very vividly to this day, because they damn near turned me upside down. Got me against the wall. They was making sure that the minister was safe. And that's what they've done through so many years. And of course, you know, when we talk about the minister, you know, to talk about the fruit is a very, very special group of people that have protected him and have secured him. And oftentimes, man, you know, when they breach, when the Capitol of the United States was just breached, you know, 2 weeks ago, I always think when something like that happened, if the fruit had been there, there wouldn't have been nobody coming up those steps.
That's a fact. And thank you for sharing that. And even, you know, what you shared about Howard and the impact that it has on you. In preparation for this interview, I came across an article that it quoted you, and it made me think about the experiences of the founder of the Nation of Islam, who we refer to as Master Farad Muhammad, the teacher of the Mozan Bilaj Muhammad, who was a black man who could pass for a white man because of his complexion. And we were taught that this allowed him to get into various environments, and he studied the minds of Caucasians. In an interview, you mentioned how your complexion, as you talked about the brothers with the pat down, how it allowed you to see racism in a way that many blacks have never seen. So can you describe, you described it as being raw and naked racism. Can you share with us some of the examples of what you saw and experienced that caused you to describe that as such?
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep and that's heavy. I kind of start with a personal experience that I had that removed an awful lot of innocence. As a 10-year-old, I had just gotten a shiny red bike from my mom and dad. And of course, my mom gave me the instructions, do not leave out of the driveway. And as a rebellious 10-year-old, that meant go far away. So as soon as they turned it back and went in the house, I was out on the street, man. I drove up. And it was really only about a half a mile from where we lived. I saw this guy, this white guy, who had a real big yard. I saw him on something, and I saw stuff coming up from beneath this. It looked like a little truck. And so I take my bike and I go over there, curious me. And he stops and I said, hey, what is that? He said, this is a riding lawnmower. It's the first one I had ever seen. And on the back of it was a pipe. And that particular pipe had turned white, and it was kind of like dripping water. And I said, that looks like my mom's refrigerator. Sometimes I help her to pick ice around it. Is that cold or is that hot? He said, it's cold. He said, it's cold. Touch it. Innocent, curious, aggressive me. I grabbed that pipe and it was white hot. And he said, something worse is going to happen to you, nigga, if you come in my yard again. And I could hear him laughing as I drove away, steering my bike one-handed, and having that pain seared into my hand. And he was laughing at the top of his lungs. That, I thought, was the behavior of a devil. That was one thing that I'll never forget. Even as I tell you this story right now, I feel the pain in my left hand, and I hear his boisterous laughter. That was when I was 10 years old. When I was 13 years old, playing in junior high school, I was a big fish in a small pond. I was certainly one of the best players. Some people say the best baseball player in my area. My high school field is named the Rock Newman Field. So that says a little something. Don't want to brag or boast, but that says a little something. So we got our uniforms. It was the day of the game. Early that morning, we went and got our uniforms. And at that time, 1965, I had a full head of curly hair that I would take a pic and have an Angela Davis looking afro. I loved it. So my cap didn't fit, and there wasn't anything more important to me than looking good in my uniform. So I had seen this barber shop across the street from my high school. Up until that time, no one had ever cut my hair except my uncle. And so I go to the, instead of going to lunch, I go to the barber shop, asking to get a haircut. I sit down in the chair. He puts the apron around me and starts, doing his thing. Asks me, what's my name? I tell him my name. He asked me, where did I live? I told him where I lived. Now, I didn't know at the time, but he was figuring out whether I was black or white. I kind of had a funny sounding voice. He was trying to figure it out. When he determined that I was a Newman who was a part of a light-skinned family that lived down in Brandywine, I saw him taking a razor and kind of sharpening it on his strap, which didn't mean anything to me at the time. But he took that razor and he put it under my throat. And he said, nigga, if you ever come into my barbershop again, this is how I'm going to use this razor. And I mean, he pressed it against my throat. So needless to say, I was extraordinarily nervous. I was scared as a 13-year-old.
Wow.
I got out, and once I collected myself, I went back and I didn't tell anybody for several days. And, we had our baseball game. A couple of days I started telling a couple of my buddies what happened. Now, his mistake was, and I just want to share all of this. His mistake was because, I certainly ain't an angel now and ain't been an angel ever. But he had a barbershop that had 3 sides, all glass. His doors were glass. And the back part was wood and brick. And his driveway was full of big stones, big rocks, big gravel. So one night we waited after practice, me and a couple of the fellas, and we went over there, and there was no glass left standing. It all came down. It took him about a month to put it back together. It took us about 2 weeks to take it down again. So, that's one level of it, of just real visceral experience that I've had, where I have seen the demonic nature of some white folks who, just because they realized that I was black, how their behavior came forth.
Wow.
Now, I have examples throughout time.
I can imagine.
Of hearing conversations when they thought they were all amongst their own. And so it's unfiltered. I've seen the raw, naked racism that you or the brothers that we've been talking to, you might not see that. You'll be profiled or whatever it might be. But I've had a glimpse. So to me, race has always been a big issue. It wasn't until about a year or so, maybe 2 years ago, that Ron Daniels said to me when I was interviewing him on my TV show, he said, Rock Newman, you're a race man. And I never thought of myself that way.
Wow.
I then went and looked up race man. And I came back and I was like, you know what? Yeah, maybe I am, because I see most of what happens in this world through a racial lens, where there is the perpetuation, the significant attempt and the perpetuation of white supremacy and black suppression.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, so I don't ever shy away from calling that out and challenging that.
Wow.
And I would say undoubtedly the number one proponent in this country, maybe in the world, that has challenged that in the most articulate, strong, powerful, lightning bolt kind of way is a guy by the name of Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yes, sir. And that's what we're gonna get into that. And thank you for sharing those very touching and personal experiences, man. That is powerful. We're gonna go to our first break, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna get more into those questions that you were about to talk about, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and much more. So for those who are tuning in, we thank you all for tuning into the National Network View. Let us pause for a moment for these announcements, and we'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. CASHAPP NNVNEWS.
He anointed our head with oil till our cup runneth over. He who Master Farrakhan, that is he.
Greetings. This is Tarika Shakir Muhammad with National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story talks about the presidential inauguration, an American insurrection, threats to national security, and the loss of national unity. Uneasiness, fear, and division plague the United States at a critical hour. Can America survive? Will there be war at the Capitol? To read more, please subscribe to FinalCallDigital.com and tune in to Final Call Radio. This is Tarika Shakir Muhammad with an NNVNEWS.com Final Call cover story.
And we're back on I Have a Testimony with your brother Willie Muhammad, with our special guest, Brother Rock Newman, who was just sharing with us some of the unique experiences of racism that he faced in America. And he was talking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And before we get into the question about the minister, I got to ask you about this. You know, from my research and study of you, you are a person that does not allow popular opinion to dictate whether or not who you associate with. It's obvious with your support of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and you support those who are forsaken and abandoned by sometimes even our own community. And I want to ask you about our brother, the late Marion Barry, the former mayor of Washington, D.C., because in an interview that I read, you spoke about how while many were abandoning him, you actually came to his aid. So can you share with us about our brother and some of the great things that he did?
Sure. That was something that a lot of my friends, associates, business people I was doing business with, so strongly advised me against doing. It was right at a time where I was managing and promoting and bringing Riddick Bowe through the ranks. We hadn't gotten to the top of the mountain yet. We were climbing that mountain. And Marion emerged, or I should say submerged, as the most politically dead politician in the history of the country. He got set up and got caught on tape smoking crack cocaine and saying the bitch set me up. He was done. He was politically dead. And there were he had frailties that he battled. And during his time in the valley, those who he had helped, those who he had helped to become millionaires. You know, the one thing they talk about how controversial Marion Barry is, no one ever accused him of any kind of financial malfeasance. He did what he thought was the right thing. When he became the mayor, he said to those people getting city contracts in Washington, D.C., at that time was an 88% black city. If you're doing work in Washington, D.C., and our taxpayers are helping to fund what you're doing, 35% is going to go to minorities. He created, at the time, he and Maynard Jackson, right around the same time, created the largest middle classes and the wealthiest middle class communities that the nation had ever known. Marion started a summer youth jobs program that was and still is the envy of the nation. No one has done it better. His popularity amongst seniors, you go to the other extreme, his popularity amongst seniors was because he loved them, he cared for them, he made sure that his policies addressed their needs like they addressed the whole spectrum of the city. And when a black man stands up and does things for black people that is of a quality nature as he was doing, they come after you, no question about it, no question about their powers. They come after you. And ultimately, after he was mayor for a total of 12 years, for 7 of the 12 years that he was the mayor, he was perhaps the best mayor ever in the country as to how he helped transform Washington, D.C. And in all of that, there were demons that he was battling from a childhood in Mississippi, in Itabena, Mississippi, where everyone tried to tell him that he would never be anything. So he was battling those demons, and he succumbed to alcohol and drugs. And as I said, when he was in the valley, when he was at his low point, just about all of those people that he had helped to become millionaires and wealthy, they ran, man. They ran away from him. And I had gotten to know him somewhat, not really, really close. And the more I saw them run away, the more I stayed in touch with him. You know, we hung out a little bit. I went over to the house while he was going through his hard times, and we talked. And I said, hey, man, you need to get away from this. Come in the training camp with us. He came in the training camp with us, and man, people acted like I had brought the boogeyman to training camp. And as I said, friends, advisors, folks I was doing business with, like, man, you're hurting your career and you're hurting Riddick Bowe's career. And I didn't have any sophisticated response to it. I just was doing what came naturally to me. And as I mentioned, him being the most politically dead politician, when he went to prison, just before he went to prison, after he had, been caught and was no longer the mayor, I gave a graduation speech at Lorton Prison, about 30 miles outside of DC. It was a graduation ceremony. And I introduced several people that were with me. Marion was one of them. And I said, here is the former and future mayor of Washington, D.C. That was when he was at his absolute lowest and absolute worst. And Marion did his time. He came back and he ran for city council. And I never will forget, the day before the election, he was doing a report. He was doing an interview with the Washington Post editorial board. We came downstairs, and the government, DC government, had put a boot on his car because he had unpaid tickets. And I juxtaposed that to the next night when the impossible, what they said was impossible would happen. that he became the mayor again of Washington, D.C., and had a police escort from the Harambe House, the former Howard University Hotel, down to the convention. It had a police escort to bring us down to the convention center, where brother gave a speech. And look, I had to take this. I just have to take this. When the results were coming in, he was far behind, but he's such a political genius. He knew where the other votes were, and he said, "We got this. We got this. We got this." So I said, "Hey man, did you do a did you do a speech? Did you do an acceptance speech?" He was like, "No." And he turned to somebody. "No, there's nothing." Man, I sat in the floor and started to write something, and it started out with "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Marion started his first comments at the podium that night was "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." And I supported him then because I felt like his example would be one that brothers all over the country and all around the world could say, if this man was as politically dead as he was, and he cleaned himself up and came back as a qualified brother to lead again, that's an example of getting knocked down and getting back up. And that's an example that our community needs. It needed it then, and it needed it still today.
Wow, beautiful. You know, and you are right. We need examples of people who have fallen, but they have gotten back up, right? And beautiful example. And you started to talk about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and when Brother Captain Dennis, when he called you and we were on the phone, we were actually beginning the beginning process of trying to secure this interview. You mentioned something that stuck in my mind, where you said, and I quote, you said you would not bat an eye to avoid giving your life for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So my question is, what is it about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that will make you take such a position?
We, as the downtrodden in this country, we need help. We need vision. We need strength. We need the example of a fighter for our rights and our causes that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt has never and would never compromise what's in our best interest. There are very few. They come, this is Slim and None, and Slim the left hand. The minister continues to stand strong. And I'll tell you something, that's not just me who has had the luxury of being able to spend personal time with him that feels that way. The spirit that brought over 1 million men to Washington, D.C. on October the 16th, 1995. People have always said, how could one man do that? Guess what? No one else ever has. No one. White, black, or otherwise, no one has done that. We talk about Obama's inauguration and Trump, no one has stood up and attracted over 1 million dignified, peace-loving, family-loving black men to come in and to rededicate themselves to lifting us up. The spirit of the minister, the power, the eloquence, the example of the minister is what was able to do that. So for one person to be able to have that kind of effect, I would consider myself a chump, and I ain't never thought of myself as no chump. If I thought somebody was about to take him out and I had a chance to get in the way and it be me, I'd do it in a heartbeat as long as I got breath in my body.
Beautiful, brother, man, beautiful. And also you shared and you talked about how you thank you for sending me some of the pictures from that night. you talked about how you and your wife, y'all playing your 25th anniversary, right? And it was a function that was held on a presidential yacht. And you mentioned to me how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and Mother Khadijah were special invited guests, and how the minister kind of officiated the ceremony. Can you share with us why you invited him and some of your memorable moments from that actual night?
Okay, so we were thinking about what were we going to do to celebrate our 25th anniversary. We've been so very blessed. And we thought, okay, I had a relationship with the guy that had restored the presidential yacht and was renting it out to, American Express and Bank of America and the big corporations. And that's one of my favorite pictures right there with the minister and Brother Dick Gregory. So we said, let's invite 25 of the closest friends and the people who are most important in our lives. And let's try to have this event. Let's try to have our function, our dinner, our outing, our celebration on the presidential yacht. Now, there was a caveat. I didn't know if I was going to do it, if the minister couldn't be the one who was going to come and officiate, if you will. So when I called him to talk to him about it, he has a great sense of humor and humility. And he said, "Hey, Brother Rock, do I belong on a presidential yacht?" I was like, "Really, you belong in the White House." But yeah, so this is what we're doing. So he told me, he said, I kind of have shied away from marrying people or remarrying people. He said, I'm more comfortable doing eulogies because those who I eulogize, they can't come back and blame me for anything. When I tell you he has an incredible sense of humor, if folks could only spend some time and hear some and see some of his humorous ways, and perhaps one of the most haughty, wonderful laughs. This man has one of the greatest laughs of anyone I've ever been around. So finally I said, look, okay, so let's not make it where we say it's official that you are officiating, but that you'll be the guest of honor and you'll be the last to speak. He said, we can work it out. So they came, he and Sister Khadijah came, actually Mustafa and Maria came also. And of course, a couple of the fruit, few of the fruit had to come check that presidential yacht out. Didn't matter if it was presidential yacht, the minister was getting on it, they had to check it out. And we made sure they were able to do just that. My wife calls it one of the greatest nights of our life. I characterize it the very same way. And the eloquence and the love that the minister and how he spoke about us and what we had meant to him and his love for us is something that we cherished that night, and we, again, will cherish until we breathe no more. It was an incredibly special night. And let me just say something, and this might sound petty, but that night, the minister's clean. This man dressed clean.
Yes, sir.
That night, that brother had on the darkest blue sort of wool blend suit that I've ever seen. And in that dark blue suit, there were like some copper looking pinstripes that had so much copper in it that when the light hit it a special way, it would reflect. And so I told him, I said, Minister, one thing I want to ask you, when I lose 40 pounds, can I have that suit? He said, brother, when you lose that 40, I'll give you this suit. I haven't lost that 40 yet, I'm still trying. Just 20.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that. And we want to go, we have one more commercial breaks, and then we're going to come back because we have some more questions. I definitely want to talk more about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and your experiences. So once again, we appreciate and we thank every one of you all for tuning in to National Network View. So we're going to pause for these brief announcements and we'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. CASHAPP NNVNEWS.
National Network View was recently banned from the media platform YouTube.com. Within 12 hours, the NNV department quickly sprung into action with an independent service system to back NNVNews.com. The nation's news network is now streaming content 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. As we extend gratitude for the believers' financial support through donations, this media activism will not stop. Please continue to be a part of a force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Donate to NNV News. This is Clifton Muhammad with National Network View.
And we're back with I Have a Testimony, and I'm Brother Willie Muhammad with our special guest, Brother Rock Newman, who just shared a very special memory, his 25th anniversary with Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and Mother Khadijah and others were there to witness. It's interesting that in that last commercial break, it closes out with the book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. And it leads us to this next question, because you were present when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had the meeting with the Jewish businessman Edgar Brofman. So can you tell us how that meeting came about, and just what do you remember? Anything that you can share about that meeting?
Yeah, Willie, let me give some context and background to it. On November the 13th, 1992, Riddick Bowe won the heavyweight championship in Las Vegas. He beat Evander Holyfield. And shortly after, producers from 60 Minutes started to reach out to me and ask if I would be interested in doing an interview. And I'm like, 60 Minutes, sure. And then they said the interview, the host would be Mike Wallace. And I was like, whoa, Mike Wallace is pretty tough on people. But yeah, I'll do it. And they said, well, let's explain something. The only way we'll do this, you claim to be the antithesis of how managers and promoters do their business, that you're very transparent, that you don't take anything from the fighter that you shouldn't take, and all of that. And you said before, your business is an open book. And if that's in fact true, that makes you of real interest to our show. If for some reason you don't want to do that, because if we do this story, we're gonna come with a microscope and look at everything you've done and how you've done it. And the chips fall where they will, So I was like, okay, come on. I don't have nothing to hide. I stand behind what I said. So they came, and over the course of months, they did interviews. They went to my mama's house. They talked to everybody. It was everything in my life was examined, and they ended up doing a piece that aired on May the 22nd, 1993. And of course, you feel like you've developed a rapport with folks, but you don't know until the story comes out, how it's going to be. I watched it that night. I was holding my breath. And it turned out to be quite the positive story. Marion Barry's wife, Cora, told me, she said, you're real brave for doing that. If 60 Minutes come to me and say they want to do a story, I'm going upstairs. So, hold on, wait a minute. I'm going upstairs and get a gun and blow my brains out. So after it was over, I actually had a good rapport with Mike Wallace. Strangely enough, just whatever. And I said to him at one point, because obviously, something came up about Farrakhan or whatever. He was at my house. He came to my house and he saw the big photo that I had of the minister. And so he said, that's a lot of controversy, what has happened about that. I said, look, this one of them, how is it that 60 Minutes is supposed to be the creme de la creme of news shows? And you really haven't ever done anything with the strongest, most powerful, most controversial, yes, black man in America. How is it that y'all call yourself, the #1 show and you've never done anything like that? And he kind of didn't really have an answer. A little bit later, I got a call and he said, can you put us in touch with who it would take to get an interview with the minister? I said, hold on, I'll find out. I called Brother Leonard Muhammad, chief of staff at the time. I said, hey, Leonard, 60 Minutes, talking to the guy and people that did the thing on me, there's nothing I can do to talk about what they're going to do or how they're going to do it. But they're inquiring. So they took it from there. Leonard took it from there, and an interview was arranged. It's probably one of the most watched interviews in 60-minute history. When the minister is sitting there in that red jacket that he had on, and Mike Wallace said Nigeria was the most corrupt country in history, and the minister took it from there and went off. Man, Lord have mercy. He put Mike in his place and showed so much fire again and love for his people that people are still watching that interview to this day. So when it was over, I talked to Mike Wallace. He said, hey, he's very interesting. He's one of the brightest people I've ever met. So after that, he asked me, Mike Wallace said, there's been a fracture in the relationship between the black community and the Jewish community. And I'm pretty good friends with someone in New York, the head of the Bronfman conglomerate with the liquor and the record label and all of that. He has incredible sway amongst the Jewish community here and abroad. Why don't we try to arrange a meeting to see if the minister who has so much influence and cachet with the black community, and Bronfman, who has this, cachet and influence with the Jewish community, if the two of those leaders might be able to come together and sit down. A dinner was arranged in New York City. Bronfman, we went to Bronfman's place. It was a magnificent penthouse high above Central Park, and there was a dinner. This is very important. When they went in and started to have some conversation, and there was a question that came to the floor about the real purpose of the meeting. The minister said, this is a get to know you meeting. I want to thank Mike Wallace, who was there. I want to thank Mike Wallace for setting this up, because if ever I can do something that might advance the cause of my people, and if that means some kind of way bridging a relationship that has been fractured, I am open to do that. So many people, the way I have been characterized, would never think that I would sit and talk with you. But I constantly seek ways to make this world a better place, to help to try to elevate my people. And I saw this as an opportunity to have this discussion to see if there was any common ground. The minister said, but I want to make real clear, I am not here to talk about any business. I'm not here to talk about any kind of investment. I want to keep that far away from this conversation. So they said, okay, and there was more conversation. There was great food. Later on, now take from where I'm coming from, I'm like at the top of my business world at this time. And I hear the minister say that, and I'm like, man, okay. But somewhere an hour or so into the dinner, where it felt as if everybody was getting comfortable with each other, a thought occurred to me. There was a hotel in Washington, D.C. called the Shoreham Hotel. It was a wonderful place at one time, but it was going under. And the thought occurred to me that, wait a minute, Bronfman's got all the money in the world, all the relationships with the banks and everything else. The nation and the minister has a management history in terms of expanding its business, and it's got thousands and thousands of people to be able to pull from, to manage and to run. And Black America did not have a full service hotel anywhere in the country. So that thought came to me while I'm eating mashed potatoes. And somewhere I spoke up. I said, I know the minister said he didn't, want to talk, but I had this thought, and if I'm not so far out of place, I want to try this on. Lord knows this. I want everybody to understand this is wholly unrehearsed. But I just think I have an idea that if we could come together with a project like that, it could be a win-win for everybody. And Bronfman was very receptive to the conversation. The minister said, Brother Rock, you know I love you and you know I appreciate all the things that you try to do to help, but I don't want to talk no business here tonight. I don't want this to be about anything financial, any business. Okay, fast forward a couple of days, the minister speaks, I think over in Brooklyn or in Queens, and he takes to task the Black community for their lack of picking themselves up. He takes to task Muslims who are not doing their part, who are not living righteous lives. He takes together Jewish landlords who are feeding off the people who are not doing right by the people that they are renting their places out to, gouging and all of that. So, and then he wraps his speech up with a very uplifting, inspirational speech that everybody seemed to walk away from feeling good from. The goddamn New York Post and a couple of the others, you saw headlines, Farrakhan denigrates Jews. That's all you could see. That was the headline. Bronfman didn't see it, but his wife did. She was very reactionary to it and had some comments to talk about. The only reason that there was a meeting was because the minister was coming to try to get some money from them, which was a goddamn lie. And so much so, and I felt so passionate about that, I wrote a letter to the editor that I actually never thought was going to get published. And they did publish it because Bronfman had made some kind of comment, like he met with the minister. It was a test, but the minister didn't pass the test. And in my editorial letter to the editor, I asked the question, who the hell are you to be giving anybody a test in the first place? And your premise is all wrong, and there are witnesses to your goddamn lie. They didn't publish goddamn, but that was, I was passionate about that because once again, it was a classic example of the minister coming forth with the greatest of motivation, with the most sincere desire to try to do good. And they turned him into something that was so far away from his intention and what his desire was. And it was such a classic example of how any strong black man ever in this country, they either annihilate you or assassinate you because they don't want strong black leadership, because strong black leadership will lift the masses, and they never want to see the masses lifted.
Beautiful. And it's such a blessing. And see, this is one of the purposes of this show, because with your personal testimony, you set the record straight about what the wicked media tried to do to in a sense, turn the purpose of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's reason for being there. And when we said you were also, despite the contrary belief that the media has put out, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has always worked to have a sit down with members of the Jewish community to discuss this controversy. Such meetings have not taken place due to, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, there are unjust preconditions that they set forth in order for they say needs to be met before they meet with him, right? However, on your show, you invited the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center to be a part of the interview with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And on your show, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan called out the ADL and the SPL, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and any others who have lied on him. And you expressed a desire to facilitate such a showdown, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan called it. So, and I'm sure you went to work to make that happen. Can you talk about what was their response to your efforts to try to facilitate such a meeting? And why don't you think they accepted the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's offer to have those type of meetings?
Well, I can tell you, I talked directly to the gentleman. I can't think of his name right now, with the Southern Poverty Law Center. He's been there a long time. Guy got a beard. I talked directly to him. And first of all, I looked at the hate groups that they had, all who have been about violence, who have been about the subjugation of human beings. And I said, you have a category of hate groups here, and the criteria that you say that you evaluate them by, it doesn't exist with the Nation of Islam. Give me an example of one thing, of one violation that they have that's supposed to be your criteria. So he tapped danced, Pollock, I forget, but and I told him, I said, look, I did the show, I had him on, I gave him the plaque. I asked him that while the minister was there, will you be open to having a dialogue on my show? He said, I will come on your show, but I won't come on and have a dialogue with the minister. I thought that was kind of, chicken doo-doo, but, I let him come on. He gave his point. And then I had the minister on, I think, for a couple hours, or something like that. And so then afterwards, I called him and I said, okay, now I want to extend this opportunity. You're the first person that I'm calling. I will create a platform. I don't care if I got to rent Madison Square Garden or your building down there, your arenas in Atlanta or wherever. I will facilitate this. I know how to put these events on. And there would be a round table with the minister, with you all, with the Anti-Defamation League. I said, I'm going to seek all of them out. He said, no, he didn't want to do it. That he didn't want to give credibility. I said, wait a minute. You're talking about giving credibility? Credibility is 1.5 million people showing up in Washington, D.C. on your behalf. He doesn't need your credibility means nothing to him. As the minister said, when the Senate voted to rebuke him, to repudiate him, 100 to nothing, the minister said, my repudiation of them means a whole lot more in this universe than 100 of them rebuking me. That's a strong black man right there. So then I reached out to the others, and I never got beyond like secretaries. The guy who was over the ADL at the time, I forgot, he used to come on and run his mouth a lot. I never got, they knew what I was calling for. They had seen the show that I did, and you know, they wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. And because what they knew is that the minister was coming with truth and fire. And the truth and fire that he would come with would burn their asses up, because they had been telling lies for oh so long. The minister has always said, prove what I said is a lie. And I would have no problem putting myself before the court and apologizing. I have that humility in me. But don't ask me to apologize for telling the truth. They absolutely did not want that confrontation, because it was a confrontation they could not win.
Thank you, brother, and thank you, brother Rock. And see, you are a witness. You are a testimony. You are bearing a witness, because they try to make it appear as if the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has started this controversy, and he has not tried to do anything to have a sit down or come into minds. But you are a witness bearer on your show that he has tried. So we only have a few more questions left. I want to get through them, but thank you, brother, for what you're sharing. And we want to transition. You've been present at some very historical moments. You were also present at the historical meeting held at the Apollo, which was a part of the reconciliation between the Nation of Islam and the family of Malcolm X. Looking back at that night from today, what do you think is the significance of that meeting, and what do you think that it actually accomplished?
First of all, it showed the minister at his highest and best. There were powerful forces that have always existed whose purpose was to take the minister out, to get rid of the minister, either through assassination of his word and deeds or physical. And so you got to get some context to this, that Malcolm's daughter was all, they come in the press to say that she was trying to arrested, that she was trying to either arrested or certainly talked about being charged with trying to kill the minister. And as opposed to the minister going for the okie-doke, the minister opened his arms up in love and reconciliation for Kabila and for the entire family. And what the media, what the government, and the sinister bastards that have always tried to be able to utilize, to try to diminish the value of the minister, to try to kill his word, they always used Malcolm's death as something that some kind of way invalidates who and what the minister is now. And so in their, as Don King would call it, in their trickeration to get Kabila involved to do what they thought was going to further character assassinate him, out of that came a night of love, reconciliation, and reunion. at the Apollo Theater for all to see. When Sister Betty Shabazz sat in the audience and the minister and that packed audience before a TV and a TV audience saw what was a visible manifestation of the minister reaching out again to try to be inclusive and to try to bridge a gap that the devil had created for the past 30 years. It was one of the most beautiful nights of my life. At some point, to see Sister Betty Shabazz sitting there in all of her queendom next to the minister's wife in all of her queendom. It's like, for those of you who have been so diabolical and so devilish and took another shot at trying to take the minister out, look what God has done. God has brought us together. That was a powerful, special night.
Yes, sir. And thank you. And also in my conversation with you, you have been blessed to also be with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan when he was outside of the country. There's two I'm going to mention specifically, but one, you mentioned how you were with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan when he and even yourself were informed about the unfortunate passing of our brother Michael Jackson. Can you talk about that moment and what you remember about it?
Yes, I can. It was singularly the most surreal moment of my life. First of all, let me say that the minister was invited to come to Libya to be a part of the ceremonies and the business of the, I think it was the Organization of African Union and OAU, whatever it was. But all the world leaders from all the leaders from each of the countries of Africa came to Libya for an event hosted by Muammar Gaddafi. So the minister was invited. Tears would stream down my face when on the days or nights of the convention, when all of these presidents, prime ministers, and the rest would be in the convention hall and they would line up basically to come and kiss the minister's ring, to come and hug the minister, to come and tell him what a brother he has been, what his work in America, how it inspired people in their countries. A good friend of mine, Eddie Benoit, went with us. He was the translator. And so when the folks were coming up speaking French, you know, I could not wait because Eddie was translating some of the French. So I couldn't wait. And just about every time when he walked away, I was like, man, what did he say? What did he say? He's like, man, these people love the minister, man. These people love the minister. So we were there for that purpose and to see how dignitaries from all over Africa so loved this man that is so vilified in America, so mischaracterized in America. It was just a heartwarming thing, and I just felt so blessed and honored to be able to be a part of that. One day, I forget the brother's name, but he's with the nation. He was Michael Jackson's personal, one of his guys.
Probably brother Michael Amir.
It was Amir, Michael Amir. There was a call. There was a call that came from him to say that Michael was unresponsive, something like he was unresponsive, and the minister immediately said, you know, I think they might have gotten to Michael. I think they might have gotten to Michael. And we were all shocked. What are you talking about? So he told us about the call that he had just gotten from Amir. So 5 minutes goes by, and you start seeing on CNN, we're sitting in an area watching the television in one of the villas that Gaddafi had put us in. And we were all there. And you start seeing on CNN, Michael Jackson, there's been an emergency call in Michael Jackson's house, you know, whatever. you start seeing the ambulance, you know, pull up. And so we get a call. So Amir calls back and he says, you know, they just left here with Michael. And, you know, the minister was very alarmed. And then Amir calls before anything is said on CNN and says, Michael has died. And so, you know, we're hearing this phone call and feeling this phone call. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the greatest entertainer in the history of the world. We're in Syria, in the city that Gaddafi built up out of nothing over in Sirte. So that just being there was surreal as to what Gaddafi had accomplished and created there. And it was just after a speech Gaddafi had given talking about uniting the countries in Africa and creating one standard, one economic standard, one goal, tying the countries together, and that the power that that would give. So all of this is going on. I remember when Gaddafi said that, I felt like, oh my God, they're going to kill him. He is talking about making Africa stronger than it could ever be, and being able to secure the value of the dollar, of its monetary system, by what's in the ground, all that's in the ground. I had a fearful thought. I said, they're going to kill him. Then this call comes, the last call comes and said, Michael is dead. So it felt, Brother Willie, like the world had just turned upside down, man. You know, being far, far away, getting this news, and then after Amir said it, we're all conditioned, I think, to some extent, to question what we say to each other. But then CNN said it. And it was like, Michael is gone. And, you know, I'm duly aware of the love that Michael Jackson had for the minister, and the love that the minister had for Michael Jackson. When Michael Jackson felt at his most vulnerable, he would reach out to the minister because he felt he was reaching out to the most powerful, honest Black man who had the greatest integrity and never wanted anything from him except what was best for him. So Michael used to reach out to him at those times for anybody that might not know. Now you know.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Do you need to pause to get some water or what? Are you good?
I'm good, man.
Okay. We have a last few, and listen, Brother Rock, what you're sharing is so valuable, you know. It's so valuable, and it helps to set the record straight about a lot of stuff, and is introducing people to things and occurrences that they didn't know. You also were in 2009. You were part of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the delegation traveled to the country of Bermuda, and you helped to arrange many of the meetings during the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's visit. Can you explain to us, or share with us why you felt the need to allow to organize political meetings with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and meetings with he and members of the street organizations leadership, that they would hear from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan? And the brother mentioned in the comments, he's mentioned about how the minister, there was a billionaire, somebody who wanted the minister to speak to the community there. Can you talk about that trip?
Yes. From late 2006 through the first part of 2010, I spent about 75% of my time in Bermuda. I had taken over in 2007 the Bermuda Music Festival. You know, we brought in all the big names: Beyonce, Alicia Keys, UB40, Quincy Jones, Wycliffe, just Erykah Badu. I mean, you know, we had some great stuff going on there. I was good friends with Dr. Ewart Brown, who had become the premier of Bermuda. And there started to be an emergence of lethal violence in Bermuda. I remember going to Bermuda, my wife and I going to Bermuda, and the headline in the Royal Gazette, the main paper in Bermuda, said, "Drunken visitor from New York arrested." That was the headline. That's how peaceful Bermuda was, that was not prone to any kind of major theft, any kind of violence, any kind of, stuff that you rape, stuff that you normally hear. It just was for the most part non-existent. And over the course of several months, there had been a couple of murders once drugs had been further introduced into the community. And I thought that there was not one human being on the planet who could have a more powerful and eloquent message to these young gangbangers than the minister. I spoke with Ewart Brown, and he was 100% all for it. He was a Howard man. We went way back. And I called and, prevailed upon the minister, asked the minister, and let me tell you something about this guy. Let me tell you something else about the minister. Now, here is a government that is giving him an invitation to come in. The minister said, "I will come in, but I will not accept," even though Ewart Brown is the head of the government, "I will not accept any money for my visit and for my service, because the greatest leader and the greatest servant, the greatest leader is one who most is willing to serve." He and his contingent came in all on his own dime. And he came in and he spent several days there. He went to the prison. He went into sort of the belly of the beast, if you will, and he sat brothers down and talked to them and told them how they were doing the work of the wicked. And when he probed them, they didn't even really know why they were doing what they were doing. He had a profound effect on the community there. I remember there was an event where Dougie Fresh did his thing and then introduced the minister to a packed national stadium. It's very, very, very rare you ever see that. The minister pulled that off and left a very, very lasting impression on Bermuda.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. And you can see the comments, people are enjoying what you're sharing. And we just have these last three questions. And I always ask people this question because, the motive behind this show is to get people to share their moments with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, so it can help free the minister in their mind, from the propaganda that the media has put out. So that's one of the big objectives of this show. So if you had the opportunity, if you had the opportunity to stand before the world and share 3 qualities about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, what would those 3 qualities be, and why would you select those 3 qualities?
Ooh, that's a tough one. But let me start here. I was in Atlanta. I'll tell you, the timing of it was like maybe a week before T.I., the rapper, was about to go to jail. He had sought a meeting with the minister. And I saw a frightened young brother come into the suite, looking down the barrel of a gun that was prison. And after his time with the minister, I saw him get the pep back in his step and get his swag back, going out knowing that he had someone that was looking out for him, that was loving him, and that would make sure that those who were in places where he was going to be would look out for him. So the minister took his time to address this frightened young brother at the time and to assure him that he loved him and that he was going to make sure that he was taken care of. And when the whole time he was in prison, he really didn't have anything to worry about except to place his focus on his continuing greatness. That is the kind of love and selflessness that I have seen him exhibit many, many times. Now, during this past Savior's Day, it's interesting. All the years that I've loved the minister and the nation, I've never been to Savior's Day until this year, until this past year. Now, everybody's talking about whether or not the minister was going to be able to pull this off. And, you know, they would put some chairs or props or something together for him to sit down and to give his Savior's Day speech. I don't know if you were there or not, but I was.
Are you talking about when the speech that was at the farm? We had the white on
at the big arena in Detroit this year. Savior's Day this year, yeah.
Okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
In front of those thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So I saw all of what they were preparing for him to be able to sit and give this speech. The minister, through whatever health challenges he had, came in and spoke. I'm gonna tell you this right now. I've not revealed this to anybody. I missed breakfast, and the minister spoke about an hour and a half. I'm like, man, I'm gonna run out in the hall here somewhere to see if I can get something to eat. There wasn't anything I could get. I took a car and went over to the casino and went to a soul food joint and threw down. I took a car back. When I got back, which was now 3 hours after the minister had started talking, he was still on his feet going strong.
Wow.
So there is again, you've heard me use the word powerful and strong, and something in him that is so loving of his people that he makes the sacrifice to put them first before himself. One might have suggested that the minister should have been resting. Now, that was over, and then some of us went up we thought we were going to just say hello, but a dinner had been arranged. The minister comes in, he gives everybody the greeting, he sits down, and people are sitting around the table. I had the good fortune, was blessed and had the good fortune to be sitting next to him. He's at the head of the table, and I'm at the first seat on the right. So people were talking about different things. And, you know, belatedly, I had come to start to study a little bit about Elijah Muhammad. I just, truth be told, had not focused that much on Elijah Muhammad. And I started to look at the things that I've done in my life. I think I'm a fairly bright guy, fairly, successful, have done some things. And then I started looking at what Elijah Muhammad accomplished. So when it got around to me, people talking, I asked the minister, I said, Minister, can you please, look, Elijah Muhammad was importing fish from Japan. He had farmland all over the country. He was expanding the nation, and he didn't have no internet. He didn't have no cell phone. And I look at what I do, and I have to just honestly say he did 100 times more and accomplished so much more than what I could ever do. Where did that come from? How did he do that? And the minister probably spoke a good 45 minutes to an hour about the God that was in Elijah Muhammad. That the God that Elijah Muhammad introduced him to and shared with him and imbued him with. So he sat at the head of that table after just standing almost 4 hours at the lectern, giving the Savior's Day speech. And there was a humility that he had, really not taking hardly any of the credit for all that he, the minister, has done. He gave it to his teacher. So earlier I talked about love as a characteristic. That was a quintessential example of humility. And again, I think I probably would close the three with seeing how long he has been in this fight, and how when you ask a brother on the street today, who does he feel is the strongest, most dedicated, most character-filled, most integrity-filled, most honest leader in the United States for the black man and woman, they point to him. They point to the minister. So, man, I know we don't have that much time, but I could go on and on.
Man, brother, amazing. That everything that you're showing, you're sharing to people. I'm getting all type of text messages. People are just blown away for the stories that you are sharing. And my last question, I would say this: as you have demonstrated before this interview, I mean, the mere fact, Brother Rock, what you share with us about the personal, your family trial that took place today, and even with your mouth, but you still, despite all of that, made it to keep your word to do this interview. And you really didn't have to. We would have understood, right? And from the very inception, when we asked, you were like willing to do this interview. And I know it means so much for the minister. And if I know people are going to send this to him, but just to know that he has, which he already knows, that a brother like yourself, you are unapologetic in your stance with and your support of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. What advice would you give to other blacks who may be entertainers, politicians, business people, who may want to seek counsel with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for them personally, or even throw their support behind programs that the minister has put forward for the betterment of the black community, but they may be afraid to do so because they will come under fire? What advice would you give them, or encouragement would you give them?
You know, man, Martin Luther King's birthday was just a few days ago. And, you see him quoting on all the cable channels and the news channels, that he said the measure of a man is not where you stand, basically in the comfort of life, but where you stand when it's uncomfortable, but important to humanity. And I would just so strongly encourage those, oh Lord, that's one of my favorite pictures right there. I'm gonna tell you right there, the minister said, Brother Rock, I don't want you to go. Now, my wife was standing right in front of us. She took this picture. Said, Brother Rock, I don't want you to go. I said, Minister, I don't want to go either. I said, I love you. And he said, I love you more. And he held my hand and wouldn't let me go for a while. And I wasn't mad at him. But to your question, live to be free, brothers and sisters. Do not allow anyone to dictate where you show your love or who you show your love, to whom you show your love. Understand the history of this man who's going to turn 88 years old in May. And he's been a lion. And he continues to roar to this day to try to continue to elevate and to lift our people up physically and from the mental shackles of white supremacy. He has been our warrior par excellence. So somebody who has given you that, who has shown that kind of willingness to put their life on the line, just love this. Just show this man love and show yourself love. Show your people love. Show your community love and stand up. Just be willing to be a man, to be a woman, to be free.
Beautiful. I got to clap on that one. So in closing, was there anything that you wanted to share about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that you didn't get the opportunity to, maybe because I didn't ask the question? If so, this is your opportunity. Or anything that you want to share, even about what you have, your future projects that you're working on, how we can support you with your show. If here's your opportunity, please let us know.
You know, I had an opportunity to touch on it just briefly, but it is something that just so extraordinarily endearing, certainly to me, to my wife, the minister and my wife, and the minister's wife. We love them, and we're so happy that they love us the way that they do. But you know, when I think of him and think of how he's been vilified and been portrayed to be the boogeyman, Ossie Davis asked at the funeral as he was eulogizing Malcolm X, have you ever sat with him? Have you ever talked to him? Have you ever really seen him smile? Have you ever really heard him laugh? And the minister's laugh is something that is absolutely golden. And look, as serious as the minister appears all the time, and you know how he's been portrayed, he can just be the most wonderful, sweetest of human beings, and absolutely funny, bordering on hysterical. So he is a multi-dimensional brother that has been portrayed for the most part in a negative light by those who have the interest of trying to, again, maintain white supremacy. And they see him as really the greatest threat to that. So naturally, they would come after him with guns blazing all the time. Hey man, there are those of us who love him that willingly take that incoming fire so that we can protect him, because we know that he is the best we have.
Brother Rock, as I've been saying it, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say thank you enough for what you have done. You know, there's a Bible scripture that says that Satan, the dragon, was defeated by the blood of the Lamb and the power of their testimony. And I personally feel that you have helped some people to see the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan clearer today. And people who will see this interview will get an opportunity to see him clearer than they probably had before this interview, because you did an exceptionally great job of really conveying who this man is. And I want to thank you, my brother, and thank your family for sacrificing this time for you to be here with us. And I just thank you for even having the courage just to accept this invitation, man. I can't say thank you enough.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll tell you, I am someone that believes in the power of prayer, and we lost my oldest brother. He passed in his sleep this morning. He was 90 years old, and so to those of you who believe in the power of prayer, if you could send some our way, we need a little uplifting now, and. But thank you. I saw this, Brother Willie, as an opportunity and a responsibility to do what I need to do. I think I have have had the honor of having some insight that should be shared with the world, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do it right here. God bless you.
Thank you. And so for those who are watching, they're going to show with our brother. You can still follow him on Facebook at The Rock Newman Show, on Instagram, right? The Rock Newman Show. Also on
my YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Actually, what I'm going to be doing, it's going to probably be around mid-March, but I'm going to come out with I'm going to come back, I should say, with a YouTube show, with the Rock Newman Show on YouTube.
Hey, people, if you're going to see the comments, people saying that they're missing you. So we thank you, and people giving prayers for you and your family at this time. And we will definitely keep you and your family in our prayers as well, brother. Thank you, and may God continue to bless you. And now we're going to transition to our closing announcements. But this was an edifying interview, even for myself. And for those who are watching, as we always close out, we thank you all for tuning in. And as we say, we here in the city of Muhammad Mosque, in the city of New Orleans, Muhammad Mosque number 46, who we have started programs and Squash the Beef Hotline, and all type of stuff that you do. If you follow us here in the city, you know that we are a mosque of service where we're working to get rid of our mortgage. So whatever it is, for those who are watching, even if you can just share the flyer, we will greatly appreciate it. Whatever it is that you can do to help, we make this announcement every week. And now we'll go to it's something our brother talked about, prayer, because one of the things that we did are doing during this COVID, we know that people are losing loved ones to COVID, just losing jobs, and it's just impact. And being Black in America, we need prayer. So we have our prayer warriors who are part of our mosque here, Muhammad Mosque number 46. As I said, submit the name of your loved one or your name or whoever, and we will offer up prayers on the behalf of your loved one, yourself, whatever it is that we can actually do. So we would encourage you to continue to do so. We thank those who have been submitting names. And lastly, God willing, on next Sunday, January the 31st at 1 p.m., this will be our first time ever doing so. We have our interview with our sister Amy Muhammad, and she is the chef, one of the chefs for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who has been able to see the minister in moments outside of the rostrum, outside of the public eye. And we're going to have our sister here on National Network View, and she's going to give her testimony as well. So once again, we thank our brother Rock Newman. We thank his family. We thank everybody for tuning in. And we're now going to leave. And this is your brother Willie Muhammad. Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for NNV on YouTube. Go there right now. You hit subscribe, and also make sure you ask others to hit subscribe. So this is your brother Willie Muhammad with National Network View. Have a good day.
God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us. He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. CASHAPP NNV News.